The warning ignored. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Representatives from dozens of star systems filled the chamber. They had gathered not for celebration, but to deal with a problem that no one had expected. On a large floating screen above them, a message played on repeat. It was a recording from the Dravari High Command. The message said they had launched an invasion against a small blue planet in a distant arm of the galaxy. The name of the planet was Earth. Some members whispered among themselves. Others watched in disbelief. Earth was known across the stars, but only as a place of noise and chaos. The species that lived there were wild and emotional. They fought with each other more than with outsiders. Many called them primitive, but no one ever dared attack them. Not because they were strong, but because something about Earth made the elders nervous. An old being named Kareen stood from his seat. His skin shimmered like smoke and his voice echoed in every corner of the hall. He had watched the rise and fall of civilizations for over 2,000 years. He spoke slowly so that even the youngest minds could understand. He said the Dravari had made a terrible mistake. He said that in his long life, he had seen many strange things, but Earth was different. He warned that this attack could wake something deep within the human race. Across the room, a younger member named Rael laughed. He was part of a newer race that believed in speed and conquest. He said humans were weak. He said they had no fleets, no space armies, no serious weapons. He said the Dravari would crush them in days. But Korin shook his head and reminded the council that no one really knew what Earth had been doing all these years. For decades, Earth had sent signals into space. Music, voices, stories, strange data. But after a certain year, the signals changed. They became fewer, more encrypted, and then they stopped. Some said it that Earth had turned inward. Others believed they had lost interest in the stars. But Korin believed something else. He believed Earth had gone silent because it had started preparing. The council did not act. They had no power to stop the Dravari. Every race had the right to make its own choices. The council only watched and advised. Still, they sent a message to the Dravari asking them to delay the invasion. But the message was ignored. The Dravari fleet had already entered the Sol system. Their ships moved like shadows across the void on Earth. No one saw the fleet at first. The ships came in under stealth cloaks. They shut down satellites and jammed signals. Internet connections failed. Across entire regions, military radars picked up nothing but static. People thought it was just another system crash. But deep below the surface, in hidden bases and old bunkers, alarms began to wake. A man named Ray was sitting in a cold room under a mountain. He worked for a unit that did not exist on paper. For years he had trained for a moment that most believed would never come. Now the moment was here. He watched the screens flicker with strange symbols. He knew what they meant. The sky was no longer empty. Far away in a different part of the world, a woman named Lena stood beside a large underground device. The machine was old, but still alive. It had been built using parts no one talked about. Its purpose was unknown to most people, even those in power. Lena entered a code she had memorized long ago. The device hummed softly and began to charge. The Dravari fleet sent down probes. Small black machines shaped like insects. They flew across cities, recording images and gathering data. The Dravari laughed when they saw humans panicking. They did not attack fully yet. They wanted to watch first. They thought fear would make humans surrender without a fight. But something strange happened. The probes began to disappear. One by one, they stopped sending data. Then larger ships above Earth lost contact with their own scouts. The Dravari thought it was a malfunction, but it was not. The humans had noticed, and they were reacting faster than anyone expected. Across the planet, signals were sent between secret bases. Old defense programs were activated. Satellites that had been hidden among civilian ones came online. They did not show on enemy scanners. They looked like weather tools, but they were not. They began tracking the alien ships with precision. The Dravari sent a message to Earth. They demanded surrender. They promised peace if humans handed over their technology and leaders. The message was broadcast on all channels. People watched it with fear and anger. In many places people cried. In other places people marched. But in one city, a small group of scientists sent back a reply. Their message was short. It said, "Earth does not kneel in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council." The message arrived an hour later. It was played for all to see. The council watched the reply in silence. Corin closed his eyes. He said the first line of an ancient warning. "Never corner the creature that knows only survival." The Dravari commanders laughed when they heard the reply. They saw it as proof of arrogance. They ordered their fleet to prepare for a full strike. They believed it would take only a few days. What they did not know was that Earth had been ready for years. Earth had seen the stars long ago and had not forgotten what it found there. Earth had learned to hide its claws. Earth had learned to listen, watch, wait. And now Earth was no longer sleeping. Invasion had begun, and something ancient had awakened in the human race. The first strike, the sky above Earth looked calm, but beyond the clouds chaos had started to form. The Dravari fleet hovered in orbit, with pride in their minds. Their ships were shaped like blades of stone carved in darkness. They believed they stood above a primitive world and that their weapons were unmatched. They watched Earth with cold eyes, waiting for surrender, but Earth did not send messengers of peace. It did not open its gates in fear. Instead, strange patterns began to rise in the upper atmosphere. Heat readings changed without warning. Weather shifted unnaturally. The Dravari sensors picked up sharp pulses in the ionosphere. Some of them laughed, thinking Earth's systems were collapsing under pressure. But a few of their commanders paused because the signals were too perfect, too regular. Far below, on the surface in bunkers, spread across the continents, men and women who had lived in the shadows began to speak through old wires. Their voices carried across mountains, through oceans, and under ruined cities. They spoke in codes and quiet phrases. They did not panic. They had waited for this day for a long time. A base hidden beneath an abandoned rail station received an alert. A device known only by the name Gridlock was armed. It was not a weapon in the normal sense. It was built from knowledge recovered over 70 years ago. Knowledge not shared with the world. Gridlock sent an invisible signal upward, cutting through clouds and satellites. The signal found its target and wrapped around one of the Dravaris. Scout cruisers like a net, the ship shook without warning. Lights inside went dark. Systems froze. The crew ran to their panels, shouting in panic. The control core began to melt from within. Without firing a single shot, the humans had taken down a ship that was supposed to be untouchable across the globe. Similar actions began. Human satellites woke from their false roles. They were not for weather or research. They had been watching for decades, disguised as peaceful eyes. Now they opened and began to track every ship above. In a command room deep under frozen ground, an old general stood in silence. He had no medals, no flag above him. Only a map filled with red dots growing faster every minute. He gave no speech. He simply nodded. A technician pressed a switch and 20 hidden launch points came alive. But these were not nuclear missiles. These were kinetic rods built from dense metals, dropped from orbit without engines. Pure mass and speed. They struck targets without explosions, yet left no trace behind but silence. The Dravari fleet felt the blows. One by one, their relay towers and communication beacons vanished. Their network cracked. Messages turned into static. Confusion spread among their forces. The humans had not responded like prey. They had answered with precision and fury. A group of Dravari commanders gathered on the flagship. Their screens showed blurred images and vanishing markers. Their pride began to fade. One of them asked if they had underestimated the species. Another asked if retreat was still possible. the leader refused to speak of retreat. He ordered a full planetary strike. No more games, no more warnings. In the deserts of this southern continent, a machine long buried opened its eyes. It was built in a time when the world believed peace would last, but those who designed it knew better. It rose from the sand without sound and launched a swarm of defense drones, shaped like birds of prey. They climbed into the sky and disappeared into the cloud cities that had gone dark, began to shine again, not with light, but with signals. Civilian networks were turned into walls of information. Every phone, camera, speaker, and sensor joined together to create a living net. Earth was using every tool, every voice, and every shadow to fight back in a forest region of the north. A group of students stood outside their school watching strange stars above. None of them knew what was happening. Then, a voice came from the school's old speaker system. It said, "Shelter, now move to the lower halls, remain calm." It was not a human voice. It was the voice of the school building's AI, a system never activated before today. As the Dravari launched their first real strike, something happened they did not predict. Their main attack cruiser began to turn its weapons away from Earth and toward their own fleet. The cruiser fired before they could stop it, destroying one of their smaller vessels in seconds. Panic spread across their ranks on Earth. A hidden team smiled. They had done the impossible. They had hijacked an alien warship using Earth's crude technology, enhanced by decades of quiet research. The Dravari had called humans primitive, but now they watched their own weapon turn against them. In the Galactic Council hall, the news arrived like thunder. Screens showed the battle above Earth. Every second more ships lost control. Every second the humans advanced. Whispers turned into silence. Corin stood and looked around at the stunned faces. He said this was only the beginning. The Council could no longer deny the truth. Earth had prepared. Earth had waited. Earth had learned how to hide its mind behind war and peace and noise. Now the mask was gone. The Dravari still had numbers, but not control. Their ships began to scatter. Some tried to run. Others continued to attack. Fires burned across the orbit. Pieces of steel fell through the sky like metal rain on Earth. The people watched the sky not with fear, but with wonder. They had seen the stars for centuries. Now the stars had come for them. And they were not running. They were standing. The turning point above Earth. The blackness of space no longer looked calm. Fire. Streaks crossed the atmosphere. The Dravari ships had lost their silent control. Some burned in the sky. Some drifted in confusion. One of the largest cruisers spun without power. Its lights flickered like a dying star. Inside that ship, the crew no longer shouted orders. They whispered. They did not understand how this had happened. The Dravari had studied humans from a distance. They had watched videos, read messages, intercepted signals. But they never truly listened. They believed the noise meant chaos. They believed emotions were weakness. They saw Earth's wars and thought they meant failure. But they had never understood what hid behind that chaos. The humans had no single world army, no grand space navy, no shared flag. But when the first blow struck Earth, they had become one mind. Borders became thin. Old rivalries faded. All systems began to flow like water toward a single goal. Survival in the frozen part of the world, a base deep under a glacier activated its second layer. A network of machines that ran without humans opened silent doors. Drones rose from under the ice. Not to fly, but to scan, and a link with the grid Earth had built in secret. They found weaknesses in the Dravari formation. They shared those points with every station still active. Within minutes, Earth launched a wave of attacks that looked random to the enemy, but were not one by one. The command ships lost key systems. Some lost power. Others lost navigation. One even began to broadcast human music through its own speakers. The message was not just sound. It was defiance. It was a signal that Earth was not only alive but awake. Inside a control room, far beneath the ruins of an old city. A group of analysts worked without rest. Screens showed more than battle. They showed patterns. One young mind noticed something strange. A signal inside the enemy fleet moved in loops. She traced it and realized it came from a source not known before. A hidden ship among the others, but not Dravari. Something else. She sent the data upward to higher commanding the main command center of the Terran Defense Corps. The leader stood before a wall of shifting light. He looked tired but steady. His name was not known by the public. He had worked in shadows most of his life. Now he gave one clear order. Activate Phoenix Protocol in the sky above the oceans. A platform hidden under false waves began to rise. It was old, but had been upgraded over decades. It looked like a piece of the sea made of metal. From it launched a vessel never shown to any government. A black shape shaped like a blade cut through the air without fire. It flew without wings. Its purpose was simple. To reach the hidden ship. The Council received this information seconds after the launch. They could see Earth's response was not wild or confused. It was exact. Every move had purpose. One council member stood and demanded to know who had armed the humans. Corrine answered without anger. He said no one had armed them. They had armed themselves in silence. The black vessel reached the hidden ship without resistance. It sent a pulse through the hull. No explosion, just contact. Inside the ship, systems froze. Lights turned red. A voice played through every speaker. The voice was human but spoken by a machine. It said, "We see you." Dravari realized too late that this hidden ship was not one of their own. It had been placed there by another force. A force that had always feared Earth. This was not just an invasion, it was a test. When the humans were passing back on Earth, the people began to see news from different parts of the world. Not messages of fear, but signs of hope. Enemy drones falling from the sky. Alien walkers stopped in their tracks, villages untouched. Children led to shelters calmly. Humanity had not only fought back, it had protected its heart. Above the planet, a massive explosion broke the silence. One of the Dravari command ships exploded from the inside. Not from missiles. From hacked systems turned against themselves. The humans had entered the code. They had turned enemy machines into their own weapons. On the edge of the fleet, the Dravari commanders called for retreat. But escape was no longer simple. Earth had closed the path. Satellites controlled by the humans blocked the safe jump routes. Any ship that tried to run faced disruption. A few made it out. Most did not. In the council hall, the silence had changed. It was no longer shock. It was something deeper. A kind of fear. A quiet fear that they had misunderstood a world they had called small. Corrine spoke again. He said the age of Earth, hiding in shadows, was over on the battlefield. The humans did not stop. They moved forward, but not to destroy. They captured. They took control. They studied enemy tech in real time. What should have taken years, they did in hours. They learned quickly. Faster than the council had thought possible. One human team managed to take control of an entire enemy hangar ship. They opened it and found prisoners from other worlds. Races once taken by the Dravari. Those beings looked at the humans with wonder. They had never seen such resistance. They had never seen a world rise in this way on Earth. People began to understand what was really happening. This was not just war. It was a moment that would change the stars. Humanity had stepped into a new role. Not as victims, not as rebels, but as something new. A force that could not be ignored. In the council hall, someone whispered a line that no one forgot. They said, "We watched them grow, but we never looked close enough." Earth stood stronger than anyone had believed. And the battle was no longer about survival. It had become a message. A message written not in words, but in action. The rise of Earth space. Above, Earth had become a field of broken metal. Smoke trails moved like rivers in slow motion. The stars flickered behind drifting ship fragments. The Dravari fleet no longer formed a formation. It had become a cloud of confusion. Control was slipping from their hands and falling into human command inside. A hidden orbital station spinning in low gravity, a group of scientists worked without stopping. They had collected parts of enemy drones and weapons brought down in the last few hours. With simple tools and sharp minds, they began to unlock what was never meant to be touched. They did not speak much. They only moved from wire to panel to code to result. One of them connected a cable and watched as enemy blueprints unfolded before her eyes on the ground. Human soldiers, wearing gear made from a mix of old Earth tech and new alien parts, moved through fallen zones. They captured surviving enemy units and marked them for retrieval. These soldiers were not trained for this war. They had learned it as it came. They had adapted faster than any textbook could have predicted. Every battle taught them something new, and they passed that knowledge like fire from hand to hand. Across the sky, signals danced between Earth and its stolen prize. The hijacked Dravari cruiser now moved with human control. Its engines, once strange and unknown, were now understood by engineers who had never left Earth's atmosphere. They used this ship not only to fight, but to scan deep into space. What? They found shocked even the most prepared minds. There were more ships watching from a distance. Silent and still, not Dravari, not Council, observers. The humans sent no threats toward them, only a silent message. "We see you too." The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Lights inside the hall dimmed. Faces once proud now looked away. No one spoke for a long while. Then one voice rose. It asked how Earth had gained this strength. Another voice answered that maybe Earth had always been strong, but no one had taken the time to see it. Corinne stood and raised one hand. He said Earth was not rising by accident. He said humans had been tested again and again for generations, not by chance, but by design. And now they had passed a test even the Council had failed to understand. He said Earth was not the same planet the Council had studied decades ago. Earth had become something else. High above the clouds, a new station powered by a core never used before came online. It had been waiting under oceans for years, disguised as a lost research vessel. It rose slowly through waves, then clouds, then into open sky. From this station a signal was sent, not just to Earth but across space. A signal of invitation, not of peace, not of war. A call for response. The signal said the Terran Defense Corps would now enter space fully in major cities. Screens lit up with a message from Earth's new command. It was not spoken by one leader. It was built from many voices: scientists, soldiers, doctors, builders, thinkers, dreamers. It said Earth was not looking for revenge. It was looking for understanding, but it would not kneel. It would not forget. It would not be silent again. In space the Terran fleet began to form. Not huge, not polished, but real. Made from captured ships, upgraded crafts, experimental vessels, and even large transport bodies turned into carriers. Engineers from different nations worked side by side. Languages mixed, but the mission stayed clear: to hold Earth's sky. To never allow silence to return. To make sure no child would look at the stars with fear. One part of the Dravari fleet tried to escape. It turned its ships and launched toward the edge of the system. But Earth was watching. A group of drones formed a barrier in their path, not to destroy but to speak. A voice came through every Dravari system. It said, "You came as masters, but now you leave with a lesson." The Dravari commanders knew they had failed. They knew their pride had led them into a storm they could not control. Some blamed each other. Some blamed the Council. But one younger officer simply stared at Earth on the screen and said, "Maybe we never deserved to win inside the Council chambers." Debate turned to argument. Some demanded Earth be blocked from expansion. Others said Earth should be welcomed into the Council. Corinne listened quietly, then spoke again. He said Earth would not ask for permission. He said Earth would rise whether the council agreed or notin'. Earth, a group of young minds watched from their homes as news spread. Stories of humans walking on the remains of enemy ships. Stories of shared food between prisoners and soldiers. Stories of music played on alien speakers. The world had become a place of many faces, many hands, all building toward one thing, not domination, but presence. In the orbit of Mars, a new Terran base began to take shape. Built from recycled metal and powered by both sun and fusion, it served as a sign that Earth was no longer only for Earth. It would now step into the wider galaxy, not as a forgotten world, but as a new force. One that had earned its place not through wealth or age, but through survival, through will, through unity. In Firon, the edge of the solar system, deep sensors picked up a strange shift, a movement in the stars. Something large was coming. But Earth did not panic. It prepared. The rise of Earth was no longer a question. It was a reality. The galaxy would remember this invasion, not for what the Dravari did, but for what humanity became. Council Judgment Day. The Galactic Council's main chamber glowed dim under the weight of silence. The council members were not speaking. Their eyes were fixed on the image floating above the center of the room. A single Terran ship was approaching. It moved slow but steady through the void, heading toward the neutral zone near the council's world. No weapons powered, no fleet around it, just one vessel. The members watched with mixed thoughts. Some feared this moment. Some believed Earth would arrive to demand punishment or dominance. Others waited in doubt, thinking maybe it was a bluff. Maybe Earth was not ready. Maybe this was just another mistake, but Corin knew better. He sat with calm eyes, watching the stars shift behind the ships. Trail, he had warned them. He had told them Earth was different. Not because of its weapons or its mines, but because of its nature. A planet shaped by storms, wars, betrayals, losses, and survival. A place where pain had never broken the will to rise again. The Terran vessel slowed as it entered the council's range. It was silent from the outside, but inside it carried a voice that had traveled far. A voice made not from one leader, but from many. Scientists, historians, veterans, and ordinary people. They were not here to bow or threaten. They had come with questions. The council opened the channel. Every race in the chamber heard the voice of Earth. It asked why no one had warned them. Why no one had tried to stop the Dravari. Why silence had met every sign of danger. The voice did not rise in anger. It moved like water, sharp but calm. It said Earth remembered everything. The fallen cities, the screams, the sky filled with fire. It said the wounds would heal, but the memory would not vanish. Few members looked down, unable to hold the gaze of that voice. Others whispered excuses. They said Earth had never joined the council, never followed protocol, never signed the treaties. But Earth answered that no treaty should allow invasion. No protocol should blind justice. No law should let children watch the sky fall without warning. Corin stood slowly. He faced the chamber and raised his hand. He said Earth had spoken not with anger, but with truth. He said their silence had been a mistake not of law, but of heart. He said the council had grown too proud, too blind. And now a world they once dismissed had risen with fire in its breath and stars in its hands. Outside the chamber, the Terran ship released a beacon. It floated gently through space, then opened like a flower. Inside was not a bomb, not a weapon, but a record. A datasphere containing images, sounds, and memories of the invasion. Not just destruction, but bravery, courage, unity. It was a gift and a warning. A message without hate, but full of meaning. This is what you caused, and this is who we became. The council took hours to respond. Debates rose, but they never turned to yelling. The weight of what had happened was too strong. At last, a decision came. Earth would be offered a place not just in the council, but on the core seat. Not because of power, but because it had earned respect. The offer was sent with care. The Terran voice returned, not with acceptance, not with refusal. It said Earth would consider, but it would not be bound. It would walk with others if trust was rebuilt. It would help if the stars needed peace. But it would never again wait in silence while shadows moved toward its skies back on Earth. People gathered in park streets, rooftops watching as the stars moved gently overhead. News spread fast, not of war, not of fear, but of recognition. A world once divided by language and border now stood as one. Name among many, Terrans. The name echoed in every message sent into space, in the far sectors of the galaxy. Races who had once watched Earth with disinterest now watched with respect. Some sent messages of welcome, some asked for help, some offered alliance. Earth answered all with care. Its rise was not about control, it was about presence. About saying we are here, and we are not going away. The Dravari leadership faced their own fall. Their people turned against them. Their soldiers refused to fight. Their cities asked why the war had been started. The answers never came. They had thought Earth would break. Instead, Earth had become the fire that revealed their weakness. In the ruins of once silent facilities, Earth built new stations, places where species could meet, share, learn. Not under banners of conquest, but under quiet stars. These stations were open to those who chose peace, those who came in force would meet walls, not walls of stone, but minds, ready minds that remembered. On the moon, a monument began to rise. Built from fragments of fallen ship's metal, once meant to destroy, now shaped into symbols of hope. It held the names of every lost soul, human or not, who had fallen in the fire of invasion. People came from across the world to see it, to touch the names, to remembering a quiet place far from cities. An old man sat near a screen watching the council's broadcast. He smiled not with pride, but with relief. He had spent his life warning that Earth must prepare not just for war, but for truth. Now he saw it happen. His eyes closed gently as the wind outside carried the sound of children laughing. The stars did not look the same anymore. They no longer seemed cold or distant. They had changed. Not because of their light, but because of who now stood beneath them. Earth had been invaded. Earth had burned. Earth had bled. But Earth had risen, and the galaxy would never forget what happened when world decided not to fall. The end.